Dear aspirants of European Diploma in Intensive Care, here I am Dr. Sunil Garg to guide you in this journey. First of all, very good morning to you all. In this video, we will go through several questions spanning different organ systems. You can pause the video and read the questions and its choices yourself. You can take your own time to practice and understand. Subsequent to questions, you will find the correct answers for that question and its explanation. For any more explanation, please write down in the comment section so I can respond there. I wish you a great journey ahead. The primary aim of initiating this is to introduce you with a variety of questions the way it appears in exam with different organ systems. Questions are based on basic knowledge and concepts and easy to understand, and their difficulty level is slight to moderate. These questions are designed to test knowledge and decision making skills. The explanation provides the rationale behind the correct answer, helping to reinforce learning and understanding of key concepts in critical care medicine. Now you can see questions and their choices. here I finish, and thanks for watching this video. Please do not forget to subscribe to this video. Till then, bye.